the purists, that's always kind of like the downfall. Like, the people hating on bands like Baby Metal. It's like, there's nothing more metal than Baby Metal because they just don't give a fuck what you think. Just like, we're doing our own thing. You can take it or leave it, but we're not going to change it for you. You know what I mean? That's the most metal attitude you can have, as opposed to, hey, we're metal. We want to be on the radio. Let's make it sound like a Five Finger Death Punch because they're like being played on the radio. That'll be our metal.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming back. And if you're here for the first time, do yourself a favor and subscribe. Just like that first hit of acid or that hit of fucking E when you're at the club and you're like, this is going to make everything better. Just go for it. Subscribe. Like it mindlessly, because this is 2020, and that's what this show is about. And my name's Benny Goodman, the most mindless of them all. And my cohort's here with Siobhán Cronin.
Hi.
And Cory Peza.
How's it going?
And this week we're here with a pretty freaking amazing guest, if I do say so myself, because it's our show. But his name's Ulrich Wild, and if you don't know who he is, he's worked with insert Cory.
Well, geez, you just made me scroll past my list here.
So many people that it's hard to remember. How can anyone remember this guy's resume? I mean, everything you've listened to.
Yeah, Pantera, Alice in Chains. You have Breaking
Temple
Benjamin,
Pilots.
Otep, Dethklok.
I mean, White Zombie got nominated for a Grammy, so there's that. I mean, okay, can we just put this out there? I alluded to it on the first episode, but he literally got a song to number 1 on the rock charts that starts off with, which is More Human Than Human by White Zombie. And then he got nominated for a Grammy. And then he did it again with Wisconsin Death Trip. So, Ulrich Wild, I thank you for putting inappropriate stuff or allowing your people to put inappropriate stuff before hit singles.
Well, this episode's great because he really opened up a lot. You know, if you got to listen to part 1, we really got to get into a lot more of his background, the breadth of his career, getting,
He's too metal for Switzerland. Too metal for Switzerland.
That's the takeaway.
Yeah, he talks about working with Dimebag Darrell, Vinnie Paul, Wayne Static. It's just crazy.
His thoughts on Prince.
100%.
That's important.
So check it out. This is our second episode with Ulrich Wild.
Subscribe.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, first question, have you subscribed yet? Because apparently all of us here got so carried away in our last episode with our fantastic guest that we forgot to mention you should subscribe.
Please.
2020-3.com.
If you like what you hear, certainly go back and listen to part 1 of this episode. But in addition to that, yes, subscribe and listen to all of our other guests because we have such an amazing array of different people from all areas of the music industry and beyond.
Rusty Cooley.
And
Vivaldi. Satchel.
I'm being derailed by
John
one of my
Garabedian, Paul
cohorts
Gary.
here.
It's all right. I'll mute him.
So first of all, I'm Siobhán Cronin. Welcome back to 2020. And I'm here, as always, with my co-hosts / cohorts, Benny Goodman.
Why, hello there, Siobhán. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. What a polite, greeting from you. Normally, you're screaming into your microphone.
I have a limiter on it today.
Thank God. And then we have Cory Peza.
Cheers.
And of course, back again, since our part 1, we have the fantastic everything, producer, mixer, engineer, artist in his own right, Ulrich Wild with us. Thank you for coming back.
Too metal for Switzerland.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's the name of his live album, Too Metal for Switzerland.
Sounds good to me. Let's do it.
Yeah. So let me ask you, speaking of your background, we kind of jumped through a bunch of different things in the last episode. So now here in part 2, I'm curious to hear from you. What were some of your early music influences? Because I feel like, as you go through your career, at least from my perspective, so much of what you like to hear and what you want to hear is influenced by the things you liked growing up or the music that you played. So, what were some of your early influences in music that kind of drove you into that arena?
Well, I was a metalhead and still am pretty much. The horizons broadened, but I grew up. My very much formative years were, like new wave of British heavy metal, Iron Maiden, Priest, Motorhead, all that good stuff back in the day. But
what's your favorite Maiden album?
I don't
You
know.
a Martin Birch fan?
Yes. I'd probably have to go with Peace of Mind.
No, I know that. I'm a Live After Death guy because I feel like Maiden has never been captured fully on the record. And talking about BPMs, that was my first Maiden record, so it's also close to my heart. But I listened to those songs, and then I went back and listened to like Revelation on Peace of Mind, and it's like 20 BPM slower because there's no booze or anything involved. It was a very strange experience for me, going backwards on that, hearing the live album first, and then it's like, damn it. You're like, whoa!
And you know it's a good song. You know it's a good song when it works at both tempos.
Well, Eddie made it work. Eddie made it work, dude.
Eddie. Yeah, but before then, it was, it was ABBA and Grease. That was kind of what happened to me as I moved into the world of metal. It went from Grease and ABBA to Kiss Alive 2 to like Rainbow and Maiden and that
favorite
kind of
Rainbow song. There is a right answer, by the way.
The Long Live Rock and Roll.
If your opinion isn't shared with Ben,
no, I'm just kidding. I'm just messing with him. It's clearly Gates to Babylon, but Long Live Rock and Roll is a good one. Dio's not upset.
Gates to Babylon, yeah, sure.
Well, Long Live Rock and Roll, if you're talking career-wise, as far as putting them on the map, okay, maybe over Man on the Silver Mountain, but as far as compositionally, I think that's his stairway to heaven, Blackmore, even over anything he did in Deep Purple. Just my opinion.
That whole record was huge for me. I can tell you that.
We're covering Gates to Babylon right now, so that's why I was just messing with you.
Yeah, that's why.
It's a great song. I love Cozy Powell. Everything's good.
Fuck, dude. I saw Cozy Powell playing with Whitesnake at an open air festival that was televised in 86-ish. They played, and it was live televised. And he played this classical drum solo. It was the best thing ever. I was glued to the TV.
For people that don't know, Cozy Powell was one of the greatest drummers in the history of rock and roll.
He was amazing.
And those who don't know, because he's one of those guys that you probably from your generation say you have to know this guy. But we're removed enough from Cozy where people, who the fuck is that? Well, get on it. It's Rainbow. He's played with Brian May for a long time, who's only one of the greatest guitar players ever from Queen. Cozy Powell played with Whitesnake. I think, was that the Adrian Vanderberg time or whatever? But
no, that was well before then.
It was early, but he played with Whitesnake. One of the greatest drummers, and truly, like, no one hit like that dude.
Yeah. It was good stuff, man. It was amazing. Anyway, so I forgot where I was.
Sorry, we got derailed down the rainbow.
But you're the formative stuff. And here's a thing that happened to old people in Europe, or to people who are old now when they were young in Europe. This is what happened to them. I grew up in Switzerland. And this is a big rant coming up. So
no, please. I want to hear all about it.
Pay attention. This is important.
Subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe to this rant. What happened in Switzerland was that there was one radio station.
Okay.
For everyone. There was
very controlled for the most part.
Not just that, but does one radio station in Switzerland play heavy metal? Yes.
Really?
At Sunday morning at midnight for 2 hours. Okay. The rest of it was
so it's
pop.
like the Turtles and the Cars, and all of a sudden it hits midnight on Sunday, and then it's Maiden, Priest, Diamond Head. Oh man.
Yeah. So it's basically our Headbangers Ball for 2 hours on Swiss radio. There was 2 or 3 radio stations for one for this German part, the French part, and the Italian part. But the one we got was that one radio station, and so they would play anything from German folk music to Top of the Pops kind of stuff, and just the what have you, just like the popular music, right? And so our reaction was hate towards pop music because we didn't get the stuff we wanted to listen to on the radio.
So this is the operant conditioning why, like, when metalheads are born, why they start hating Taylor Swift. It's because people before them were subjected for real. They had no other choice but to wait through Taylor Swift to listen to Maiden, when you can actually actively just change it. So who fucking cares about those people?
And so our reaction creatively was not just a reaction for metal, but also like an answer or a reaction to being exposed to so much pop music. All of that has kind of gone away with this real niche marketing, and it shows in TV and video, TV and movie as well. If you are only listening to stuff you like, you won't have a reaction to stuff you don't like. And it limits your approach to creativity. Like, for instance, if you only watch horror movies, if you're going to write a horror movie, it's going to be just like any of these other horror movies that you've watched. But if you watch a bunch of love stories and rom-coms and, you know, some documentaries and throw all that stuff in there, all of a sudden you have a much broader mix of things to feed off of when you write.
Well, that's so important, especially in the metal
Diversity.
world, because you see a lot of people in the metal world, and back in the day, and I said this on another podcast, but like, you know, when I was younger, and I'm 38 now, if I saw a guy with an Iron Maiden shirt or a Megadeth shirt, it was like, you're cool, dude. And we'd go play Magic together, and we listen to Van Halen and not get laid. And, but now it's like, but we were open-minded and we liked things. And it didn't mean that you had to just love Maiden. Like, you know, maybe mom did play Fiddler on the Roof when you got back home, but you went and listened to Maiden. Now you see all these guys like, metal or death. If you don't like metal, or I only listen to this type of metal. And it's like, you just nailed it. Like, all the best metal, especially, took from so many other things and then made those records sound good. But that's metal. What's metal is when you're fucking Johnny Cash and you're playing, you know, fucking honky tonk, and you still go to a prison and you're more badass than any of those dudes. That's metal. And a lot of people, I feel like, don't realize that. And you're in a genre where it's a lot of, I'm not saying everyone's closed-minded, but do you find people sometimes are closed-minded and you're like, go listen to this country song. You might get it.
Yeah, absolutely. The purists, that's always kind of like the downfall. Like, you know, people hating on bands like Baby Metal. It's like, there's nothing more metal than Baby Metal because they just don't give a fuck what you think. Just like, we're doing our own thing. You can take it or leave it, but we're not going to change it for you. You know what I mean? That's the most metal attitude you can have, as opposed to, hey, we're metal. We want to be on the radio. Let's make it sound like a Five Finger Death Punch because they're like being played on the radio. That'll be our metal.
Ironic that Andy James is involved with both of those bands.
Who is?
Andy James, the amazing guitar player, played with Baby Metal for a while. Now he's with Five Finger Death Punch.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
That was like a weird thing that you just mentioned. Like, both of those things involve one of my favorite guitar players.
I think that opinion is generally from fans outside of music. If you talk to a lot of like experienced musicians, they're saying exactly what you say. They take their influence from anywhere they can get it. You know, even if they're in the heaviest of bands, they're, you know, it's sometimes surprising to see what's on, you know, their playlist.
Sure, yeah.
But it's an interesting point because now, obviously, in the age of streaming, you know, every person can sit down and curate exactly what they want to listen to. And, you know, you're not having to go through what's on, you know, the one radio station, you know, or even the two radio stations.
Siobhán knows, I have a 15-year-old that lives in my house, and I'm learning so much because I hear weird music all the time. I'm like, that's what's coming out of her room. But I asked her and her friend, like, do you have a favorite band? And her friend said to me, oh, I don't listen to bands. I just like songs. I'm like, what? But I've been hearing Careless Whisper, like nonstop coming out of her room. I play Tears for Fears. Everyone wants to rule the world. And the girl knew every lyric to it. I'm like, what the fuck? But it's just like, they got a playlist, but she doesn't know anything about Tears for Fears. She never listened to an album. She never did any of those things. Do you think it's going to come around full circle that there's a whole generation that has devalued music so much they didn't have to listen through any of the filler tracks. They didn't have to buy the record to get any of those things. They didn't have to pay through it. But now they're making no money trying to play music, realizing it's fruitless, and that now they have to do something to put money back into it so music can continue, because nobody pays for it anymore. You move out of these big studios because bands can't afford it, because record labels can't afford it, because whole generations of people haven't even bought a record ever, and they don't like bands, they like songs.
Yeah, I mean, that is the big, let me know if you find a solution to this.
I'm asking you, man.
Everybody's
I feel like
listening
Rome
to
is
that.
burning, bro.
Number
But they buy
one,
records.
there's a lot to unpack there. Let's start with that.
There always is with his questions.
Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack. Number one, I think teenage girls are notoriously a disloyal audience.
It sounds like you're speaking from experience.
Not to Harry
yes,
Potter.
when I was a teenage girl.
I'm just kidding.
Thank God for the 90s.
I do have a teenage daughter, but
That's what I meant.
yes, no, I figured, and I don't mean it as a slag or anything, but I think
Sure.
they grow quickly out of in and out of trends, and I think that's been like that forever. I mean, back to like Britney Spears or whatever.
The trend is dead, Ulrich.
There
Don't you know
go.
that?
Yeah,
The trend is
fucking
dead.
Killed it. So that's one aspect of it for them to. Like they'll be a big supporter for a little while, but then they'll drop off. So there's that. As far as music not being monetized, I think if you connect to an audience and you give them an experience, you
Like Starset. She's in Starset. She's in a band that's like Scientology that gives you all those things. It's amazing. You should actually hear about it, because I feel like she is a solution, what your band is doing, Siobhán.
Perhaps. Well, let him finish. Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Sorry, I just had to
Yeah.
So yeah, connecting with your audience, I think is a huge thing, and is a huge a way to create a fan base and retain a fan base.
Let me ask what you mean by connecting with your audience specifically, like musically or actually engaging on a
emotionally.
social...
Emotionally. Yeah. That like, so I think it's very easy for somebody to make a song and then throw it out and say, buy my song, buy my album, as opposed to having a story, having a mission, or having some kind of offering a sense of community or something like that, where you go like, this is what we're doing. You can support us by buying our stuff, and getting the fans emotionally involved with your project. They like what you stand for. They like what you're doing, what you're fighting for, what your problems were, how you overcame things, how you're approaching stuff, whatever it may be. And so that emotional connection is what gets the fans to stay with you and help you further your career and bring the message to more people,
Well, that's why I mentioned.
Ben.
That's why I mentioned Starset, because her band, first off, found out through Forbes that they had 2 billion streams. But Cory and I didn't know about the band before we went and saw them. And like, these people, it's like, how they talked about Ozzy Osbourne back in the 80s, like shoot. The Starset crowd literally is like so into it. They're dressed up. They wear space helmets. They have cryogenics on stage. Cryo on stage. They have
We don't have any frozen people or animals, I
You have a
promise.
book.
Not
You
yet.
have
That's too
theories
bad.
about things. So it's like Kiss. If Kiss was like actually more of a universe than Kiss is. Can you explain this? Because I feel like this is what bands have to do to be successful.
Yeah, well, that's it. It comes down to fundamentally that. I mean, the band was crafted around a message and a mission, which is, spreading the knowledge of how technology can affect our lives, and being aware of the future and the trends and where things are going and the types of things that are already happening in terms of technology and surveillance and the things that are likely going to happen that might be uncomfortable for us to face. So the singer who conceptualized the band is, he was into NASA and all this, space type stuff, was studying to get a PhD, also making music. But, the band was formed, I think, mostly as a concept. And then the music came around that whole storyline. There's a book, there's a community, there's the Starset Messengers and the society that is, based on all of these ideals that are talked about. But yeah, I mean, so much of the draw, obviously the music is very powerful. It's high quality, like everything is, very emotionally based, but it's also centered around a story and a community. So and I've noticed that does make a huge difference.
Well, it's like if you had a rave, like where you had a techno DJ, as we called them back in the day, with all the crazy lights and stuff distracting you, with like this Linkin Park meets emo, what's his name? The guy from My So-Called Life, Jared Leto from 30 Seconds to Mars, like, I'm hurting, but he's like really good looking and you believe him. And then you're all in space stuff. And then you got two pretty girls playing strings, so they don't know if they're getting a rock show because your husband plays a baritone PRS fucking down heavy. So it's like, is it metal? Is it a techno band? Is it Scientology? Is it a light show?
It's an
experience. And I was completely
experience.
confused. And when Cory and I went and saw you, there was literally a line out the door. And I always say I thought you guys were doing a signing. You were just selling stuff. You guys weren't even at the booth. I mean, like the band was just selling merch with the merch people, and they had to kick people out.
Yeah. Well, it covers so much ground. Like you said, you can't necessarily categorize it. I mean, it's powerful music, but it covers so many different genres within each song. It is a little bit metal and a little bit electronic and a little bit hip hop, even in one of the songs. It's got kind of a hip hop beat. So, yeah, I mean,
you're a crossover.
You're totally right.
So we obviously we talk a lot about the industry as it stands today and where it could potentially go in the future. Ulrich, do you have any predictions or maybe advice for the general artists in these days of how they can continue to evolve and stay on top of this like ever-changing industry?
Sure. Yeah, I know all the answers.
Well, you're in a unique perspective, so I just like to hear it.
No, if we had a crystal ball, that'd be great. I think, just to fall back on that other answer, I think if you can, like, your goal is to connect with the audience, and if you're staying true to yourself but you're not doing it only for yourself, like you're creating this community, basically, I think that'll go a long way for a longevity for an artist. I mean, you'll always have the labels, the big labels, they like that, pushing everything behind like one artist and milking it and dropping it. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of like their business model now, and they're good at it. I don't know. And there will be some artists that will come out of that. They'll have endurance or staying power. But I think for the little guys, I think it'll be more important to try to cultivate super fans than to have the casual listeners, which the casual listeners are great, of course. And maybe some of them can be turned into super fans. And by super fans, I mean like people that basically buy everything you put out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like that's much more valuable than just one more stream,
Yeah. And you mentioned the little guys. So that brings up Ben and I, and Siobhán, just because she's associated with us in this. But our sponsor is the band Lost Symphony, which is our band, which is the thing we would do if we were allowed to do things this year.
We have good guitar players, though.
Yes. Well, I didn't say I think we're a quality band, but I still say that we're on the little guy side. So it's interesting to hear that
Marty Friedman's only like 5'2".
Well, in terms of followership,
Nuno can't be above 5'7", dude. Like Nuno's at least maybe he's 5'7.5". He might deck me, but I feel like Nuno's a little shorter than me. So like 5'2", 5'7", but Marty wears the heels, so I guess he's probably like 5'9".
Right. Regardless, I think
those big heels.
Yeah, they are big.
They're platforms. They're not heels. They're actual platforms.
But seeing how you're saying developing those super fans, I think that's kind of the route that we've taken over the past couple of years. Is we are such a niche style that we're definitely not going to get the commercial aspect, and we don't have the opportunity to do the touring, even because we're essentially a studio band of guests. And what was that?
And broke.
Yes, that as well.
We have no money.
But yeah, it's just interesting to
I mean,
hear.
other than Siobhán, but she's not going to share it with us when she plays.
I didn't say I had money either.
Orchestra, or plays
playing in a big band doesn't mean you have money. I'll tell you that.
Placido Domingo. How do you even say his name? Andrea Bocelli and Placido Domingo. Like, how do you even say their names? I can't even fucking name the people.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other conversation. I mean,
I did good. I heard that.
No,
That
what I was
nice.
saying is
That's
that playing
nice
with
of
a big band or big artist doesn't mean you're making money, especially if you're hired gun. But that's a whole, if you're an instrumentalist that's being brought on. The violin world is its own thing when it comes to playing with bands. But anyway, Cory, go on.
Oh, no. I just was saying that it was, I think I agree with what you're saying, where it is like creating that connection, a strong connection with those people that really like the band is kind of the best way to build that fundamental, just anything to support an artist these days, because it is very easy to find fickle fans, especially with streaming and playlists and stuff, where you might come across, I like that song, and then it's gone forever because no one's buying a record and listening front to back. I think that's great insight as far from your perspective in terms of that. You mentioned a little while back, actually, in the previous episode, which you guys should all go back and listen to because it's some great information.
Subscribe.
But thank you. He's getting it.
2020-d.com.
Yeah, you mentioned that with your mixing, you're getting a lot of tracks and music from people that are recording in their home studios, and they're sending them to you in the hopes of bringing them to a commercial level. Do you notice anything in particular with the quality or the style of the music that you're getting now, where it's being done in isolation from the studio environment and with maybe production oversight and things like that, aside from quality, because I'm sure that there's people working with minimal stuff, but as far as like just that separation from what you're used to or what you were used to, where you had, I'm guessing, layers of oversight in production.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things to observe. The first thing to observe is the quality. Let's address that for a minute. Just because it was recorded at home doesn't mean it's worse than it was if it was recorded in a professional studio. As a matter of fact, I've gotten stuff through that was recorded in pro studios that was not just, up to par, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it really is what you do with the gear, much more so than the gear itself. A lot of equipment is of such quality that you can deliver decent tracks, right? And it's also good enough to reveal that you don't know what you're doing.
You're supposed to point the microphone at the amp.
Not necessarily if you want that room sound.
Yeah, see? Experiment.
It all depends what you want.
Well, then, where do I point the microphone at the Kemper?
On top, at the label.
Like, I was gonna say, do you do it at the screen or do you do it at an angle?
Do it at an angle so you can see the
or is an
the
angle
print on the
spelled
mic.
ENGL? Is it an angle patch? I'm so confused.
It's very confusing out there. It's probably
actually, that's a great question I wanted to ask you because I love the
DJing.
Kemper. Well, this is actually I know I should. I have about 25 like amplifiers in my studio, VHTs and Splons and all these great amplifiers. And then Cory one day brought over a Kemper. Mm-hmm. And I heard about this asshole Michael Britt from Lone Star, which is a great band, great guitarist, great guy actually. That he could put like a 5150, like when I have the big block one over there, right? And make it sound better than my thing. And I'm like, nah, dude, that's bullshit. That's a line 6 fucking magic trick, whatever. He plugged it in and like a keyboard. Like where there's no sound guy involved. There's just a fader to put it up, like a DJ. You know what I mean? A fader. It sounded perfect. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take my 3 microphones, which I got heckled by a famous guitar player for having 3 microphones. He's like, you don't need that. I had, my 57. I had the Pro 25, like whatever, something on it, a 414. And I compared it to this Kemper sound with the same exact DI. And I was like, it doesn't sound better. In fact, I think I like Michael Britt better. Are you at a point where you think to yourself, it's really not worth retubing that Bogner over there and using an ABY switch to get the mids from the Matchless and the Soldano? I'm just going to plug into my fucking Kemper because it's cold or I don't want to go over there.
Well, yeah, I mean, the weather certainly has something to do with it. I've found that you can get really, really good results using a Kemper through a cab.
Mm. Yeah, dude, for sure.
That is really nice. All these tools have a place in the world. And, if you travel a lot and have rely on a bunch of different sounds, a Kemper might just be the right thing for you. You imagine touring Europe and showing up with
Siobhán.
with a little USB flash drive and tell them, plug this into your Kemper and I've got my guitar sound, as opposed to,
Well, Siobhán's big enough.
That's exactly what our band does.
Well, no, but you're big enough that if you wanted to, Dustin could put together a rider, and they'd be like, "Oh, you use Marshall," and then Marshall UK would be like, "Oh, she uses the JCM 800," and blah blah blah. And you'd have a giant, and they'd just give you everything that you want. Oh, they need a Leslie speaker just to make that warble sound for that one song. Bring it, because you guys are big enough to do that. But most bands, or even people like me and Corey, we have to bring that because we don't have a choice.
But they're also
it allows you to have that consistency.
They're
too.
also
Corey.
but they're big and they're successful because they're smart with their money, and that's
and noise gates are great. Do not underestimate them. The honest proof to concept for me, Ulrich, you can speak to this. I went and saw Killswitch Engage live, and I think they were playing. I don't know if it was with Axe Effects or whatever, but when they did the and they just stopped. It was whisper quiet. You couldn't hear anything. That never existed back in the day. Like, you always had that fucking hum, that perfect B, fucking electrical sound. Always. And now, on stage, I'm like, dude, when they stopped, the whole room stopped. No one, they're like, what happened? And then you just realize it's a noise gate.
Yeah, noise gates are great.
Great story.
Kemper, brought to you by Kemper.
Cool,
Kemper, send me some shit by now.
Cool story, bro.
I know. It wasn't that cool.
Ulrich, let me ask you, so, having worked with a lot of different artists of all different genres, has there ever been an instance where somebody taught you something that you've carried through your career in engineering or mixing other people or producing? Like, was there ever some crazy aha moment of something that somebody did in the studio that you then took with you on to, in your skill set to other things?
Oh yeah, just about every project, really. I mean, that's the beauty of this job. Like, I learn something new every day with each project. Even like just switching plugin, like the order of plugins or something. Like, oh, wouldn't have thought of doing that or whatever. You know what I mean? Just like, or taping. The headstock, putting tape across the strings on the headstock to keep those little bits from vibrating, and or underneath the bridge.
I tie a sock personally, but that's just
socks, whatever. Again, no, serious. Like, we've used to tie.
It's a real
before,
thing.
Now they make actual things for it. You know what I mean? Back there used to be that white tape from the board. There it is. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's that whole hand thing of just the most minute change in holding that pick for certain notes to come through certain ways, or putting the lightest strings on acoustic guitars and using the softest picks to get that chimiest sound, to, like with Wayne, may he rest in peace as well, not changing his hand position on the neck until we were done punching in. Like, he wouldn't take his hand off in between takes. He would leave it because it was that certain sound of his picking hand and the muting of the strings that gave him the like that noteless.
Well, that's really
thing.
important that you bring that up, because did you ever think, because now it's a 25-year anniversary, Wayne, rest in peace. Like, we lost Wayne a while ago, and he was an incredible musician, incredible player, but they're now touring on that record. It sounds amazing, and it touched so many people's lives, and you're seeing 25 years later, them playing without Wayne to packed houses. I remember at the time, I actually bought a VS100 Marshall off of Wayne Static because I loved that sound so much when he came to town. So I actually have an extra one. Do you want to? Sold to me for $400 behind the Worcester Palladium. But that sound, he made a fucking solid state. Well, at least that's what he said. I don't know. Sound so fucking evil, and you guys did that. But 25 years later, same thing with Astro Creep, with White Zombie. People are now rediscovering it. Pantera, same thing. They're coming out with these 25-year anniversary. They're rediscovering it, and you have this whole new crowd of people that are like, who's this Dimebag Darrell? Who's this Robert Zombie? You know what I mean? Who are all these people? And you were fucking there. No, but it's true because, you know what I mean? I go and see Haley and she's telling me about Tears for Fears and Careless Whisper. And I'm just like, Careless Whisper is the song you listen to? It's a really long song for George Michael. Like, it's strange to me. Do you ever think with Wayne Static, like that was when you made that's what it was going to be now?
You know, I never think that any of this is going to be anything of that magnitude while I'm doing it. You know, I'm always just trying to like make the coolest thing I can possibly make. And there's so many moving parts involved after I'm done with it that you know, it's just so hard to predict, and it could the whole thing could hinge on just one stupid mistake somewhere or something not working out, or you know, you have management and booking agents and everybody else working in tandem to propel this project forward, and so you know, like in my mind, like everything that I just finished is like the greatest thing I've ever done, right? And it's for everybody else to fuck it up. And so, you know, like you always hope that it's going to be the coolest thing ever and then the biggest thing and the most amazing thing. But, you know, having been at it as long as I have, I know the reality is that not everybody is going to have that kind of impact. And so having a few of these records and projects and bands that have that kind of impact out in the world is really amazing. You know, I'm not going to lie.
What was it like working with people? So there's three people that come to mind just off the top of my head, and you know that's not even including someone like Chi Chang or Paul Gray. But you know, you worked with Dimebag Darrell and Vinnie Paul, who I consider like the Van Halen of metal. If you don't consider Van Halen metal, they're the Van Halen of metal, in my opinion. Personally, Dimebag Darrell, when I saw him, was the first dude that in Ozfest 97, I had a wow experience where I'm like, that guy's pointing up as he's bending up and his beard's red and someone's pouring shots in his mouth simultaneously, but he still sounds like he's really playing that. Yeah. And I was blown the fuck away. And then there's Vinnie Paul, who again, like I considered him the barometer for which all drummers were based off of for a very long time. Like, who gave a fuck about Mike Portnoy or the dude from Yes and all? Like, I didn't realize that those guys existed because there was that dude. And then Wayne Static, who, you know, if you said 10 years ago Wayne Static would be a legend, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would have laughed. But, you know, Wayne Static is a legend. And Dimebag Darrell is a legend. And Vinnie Paul's a legend. Do you have any stories that, you know, those people that are so emotionally intertwined with your stuff, if they take anything from this podcast, it's something that they didn't know about any of those guys?
Well, that they didn't know, that they didn't know is hard, but, you know, I certainly learned a lot from Dime and Vinny and, you know, of course, Phil to a lesser extent because he was in New Orleans doing vocals there and didn't have much exposure with him. But with Rex and Dime and Vinny, it was very formative and very influential in my upbringing in the metal production world. The most important thing was of how no matter how crazy everything got, like, you know, Dime was just such a good dude, you know, and he would just always look out for everybody, and no matter what, like even if he put everybody through hell with Blacktooths and God only knows what else, he was always there looking out for everyone, and that was you know, that's super cool. You know, everybody knows how great he is, you know, or is.
Always will be.
Yeah, and same thing with Vinny. With Wayne, I think he was very underrated as a guitarist and singer and performer overall. You know, they had the tribute concert for him after he passed, That's when it became clear how great Wayne actually was, with like the range of his voice, how strong it was everywhere, and how accurate his guitar playing was, how just what kind of a monster performer he was. Nobody really can hold a candle to him playing those songs the way he played them. So, that was certainly.
Well, I got to tell you with Wayne, so when I was younger, the way you got into shows was pretending you worked for somebody that wrote things. So I got backstage passes to Ozfest because I worked for a magazine called Boston Soundcheck, and they would fax stuff over or whatever. And for Ozfest 99, I met Wayne and Ken, and Wayne was just super nice. He's like, oh, you could tell. And I'm like 16, like barely old enough, like maybe even 15. And he was just like, oh, you like metal? This is cool. And he took me around and introduced me to everybody, and just like lived vicariously through the fact that like I'm sitting next to Tom Araya from Slayer, asking Paul Bistoff where the singer for Slayer is, because I'm having everyone sign my guitar, and I don't even realize that that's the singer for Slayer. But this has been on my wall, and it's a picture of me, Wayne, and Goichi. But Wayne took me under his wing and was kind enough to me that every single time he came to town, made sure that I got in and got me passes to everything, and basically said, watch this shit. And I gotta say that, like, it really touches my heart getting to talk to you, because that record, I remember they were opening for Fear Factory, and all of a sudden they had this band, Static X. I think I'd seen them at Ozfest 99, but this was when I first saw them at a place. And they came out, and again, a lot of sound design, just like the Rob Zombie thing, where you knew their songs just from the samples and the things. Before they even walked out, they had that. They had the samples. Everyone knew it was Push It. Everyone knew it was Love Dump, which is a great song. Great, best lyrics ever. In any song ever, I argue. Yeah. And you knew just from the guitar tone. And when they came out, and Fear Factory was a lot like that in their prime, but when they came out, it was one of those bands that like punched me in the face and said, these guys are what I want to do as far as the experience I'm feeling right now. So it doesn't surprise me at all, but it's really cool to be able to talk to you, because this is on my wall every day to remind me, because nice. Wayne touched so many people, and you were a huge part of that. So thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks for listening.
Well, let me ask you a question. As talking about all these great artists, and from your perspective of someone who's worked with all these different people, now in the world, we're exposed to so many great players. Let's say people that can play guitar really fast, or, sing and play guitar, whatever. Everything's on the internet. What for you makes a truly great artist versus just, somebody that plays, or somebody that's got wicked technique? What makes a great artist?
Well, the technique just makes you a great musician, and, writing great songs make you a great songwriter, and being able to perform well and being a great performer. But an artist is kind of like everything together. That is like a combo package, like
was that elitist?
They get the combo plate.
Was that elitist for Prince to call himself an artist formerly known as something? Because that seems like presumptuous to think that you're all those things, although we do know Prince was all of those things.
Yes. That whole thing came about because he didn't like his deal with Warner Brothers, and that's why he thought that if he changed his name, then he wouldn't be Prince anymore, and he wouldn't be beholden to the contract anymore. At least that's the story I heard, and I think that's why he walked around with the slave thing. Because he was a slave to Warner Brothers, and I think that's where all that came about. And I don't think it worked.
No.
But my favorite story about Prince is that, and this is not firsthand knowledge, but the owner of the recording studio told me that he wanted to take up rollerblading, and he couldn't find any suitable music, so he booked the studio for 2 months and wrote himself rollerblading music that only he got to listen to while he was rollerblading. So that is
where is this rollerblading music?
I don't know. I don't know if anybody has it or not, or the estate.
Actually, it came out as Nothing Compares to You, which Sinead O'Connor covered and took number one. And Manic Monday. We know Manic Monday came out, and he was rollerblading, going, "I bet you somebody's going to make this a number one." And then Morris Day in the Time, Jungle Love, had to have been a rollerblade fucking idea. You know that. Pop
You need
culture.
to listen to the verse of 1999 and Manic Monday. They're identical.
Oh, I know.
yeah.
Just like Jump and Top Top of the World by Van Halen. It's the same riff at the end of Jump is the beginning, and they pulled it off because they're Van Halen. Prince pulls it off because he's like, fuck it, I'm just going to have whatever.
That's funny.
And he also wrote 10 million songs. How are you going to not rip yourself off, especially when all your songs are awesome?
Right.
It's like Led Zeppelin saying, I'm not going to write another Stairway. Of
Ben,
course
have you
should write another
noticed Corey's
Stairway.
trying to say something?
Sorry,
It's okay.
Corey.
Take your time.
He's a bass player.
It's very important what you're saying, Ben.
No, it isn't. Subscribe.
Yes, subscribe, please. In your career, have there been any artists that have had a big impact in your production style, like an experience in the studio that kind of changed the way you thought about either the actual songwriting process, if you're doing co-writes, or the production techniques, or a way of composing something? Because some of these artists they're just such big presences that I can't imagine that something hasn't rubbed off.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, most projects, I learn, even if it's just like a minute little thing where you're like, you know what, that's a good little trick. I'm going to try that. Most notably, and most, recently, was Dethklok, working with Brendan Small. He does, he has this very symphonic orchestral production
Like Lost Symphony, our sponsor.
Say what?
Well, our band Lost Symphony, I was saying before our interview, is very similar in the concept, other than you guys are way more famous and known and incredible. But we do have a bunch of crazy symphonic stuff, but that's amazing.
Yeah.
Dethklok to give you from Metalocalypse.
And so what one thing that I learned from him is putting like a chorus vocal or chorus theme on top of an outro section. So it would be verse, chorus, and then it'd be bridge and then outro, but tying it all together by putting reusing previous sections on top of new musical parts, and tying entire compositions together that way, which works really well sometimes.
When you are working with these artists, is it a lot of, or is there, like, what's the percentage of people that come in with the pre-production done or songs written as a band where you're just kind of going over what's already there versus being composed in studio alongside you as producer?
I don't know if I can give you percentages. I can tell you that most younger bands and first projects, usually the songs are worked out much more. That's where, it's kind of like the first record. You get 10 years to write the first record. You get 10 weeks to write the second one. And so, some bands come in with the songs written and we just need to do a little bit of massaging and, just go over everything and make sure that everything's as good as it can be. Other bands, they come in with basically kind of like a verse chorus type thing, and if we feel like it's good enough to finish it off, we'll write a bridge and finish off the song somehow or another. Other bands, we've had started an Otep record, and the only thing we had was a deadline. I'm serious. It's not even a joke.
Not even coffee.
We had literally nothing. It was I got the phone call. You want to make an Otep record? I was like, yeah, that'd be great. It has to be done by July 4th. Okay. Like, can I hear some songs? Like, no, we're going to write all the songs in the studio. I was like, okay, can we get started as soon as possible here? It's like, no, it can't be not until such and such date because there's prior obligations. It's like, okay.
So what was that like?
Yeah. What is that like?
It was very stressful, but very rewarding. And, it was intense. We just showed up every morning or, musician morning, And, we just, anybody's like, anybody got any ideas? Okay. And then we just got started. And usually by the end of the day, we had a song. Sometimes we'd re-record it the next day just to get a fresher take or whatever. But, or work out a couple of little details here and there. But yeah, that's about how we did it.
Let me ask you, for a new band or someone that doesn't have, a lot of prior material, what is the process like for finding or wanting to work with a producer? Because obviously there's huge value in that, having that outside ear. I'm not sure if you do a lot of that, but how would bands or artists go about that? And what do you feel is the importance of, having that opportunity to work with a producer from the band side? I think it's something that's important for people to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's different stages of things. Like, I don't want to waste somebody's. I don't want to take somebody's money who's not ready for the stage yet. Okay. The important things is the band. If it's a band, are they going to be together after we're done doing this? Or, have to, well, but it's not a joke.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Have you met bass players?
Or drummers or violin players?
Well, your name's Ulrich Wild. I have to think to myself, there's Lars Ulrich, and that's the guy I always think, are they going to pull Lars? Are they going to pull Lars? That's every metal drummer for me.
Yeah.
It has to be a giant event horizon for you. Staring into the black hole.
There, but it is a thing of, is this helpful for them at this stage, or should they write 100 songs and play 100 shows? Obviously that's not doable right now with COVID, but the point of writing 100 songs and 100 shows and playing 100 shows is, if you're still together after that, you're actually going to be good, and you've developed a personality and a presence and an identity.
Not necessarily.
100 shows is a lot.
I've seen a lot of people think for a long time that they're good because people have enabled them, because
that is true.
But he's right. It is a test of whether you will be together. It is a test,
and you should get better, and people should be good at that point. But I have seen people where I'm like, I don't know how you've done this for that long. But if the
chemistry's not there and the band's not going to make it long run, that would be the stress test to kind of boil them out there. And
so the thing is, for every great idea you have, there's about 10 bad ones. Mm-hmm. I just kind of transfer that over to songwriting. For every great song, you have probably about 10 bad ones out there. So if you're at 100 songs, you get 10 great
try
ones.
100
it's funny. We just released our episode with Paul Geary of Extreme, and he almost word for word was saying how they, in their garage, before they did anything, they wrote 100 songs. Before they recorded anything, they wrote 100 songs and picked the 5 best ones, and that's what they went in to do for their demo. So yeah, it's 100% on, dead on.
It's kind of, that's a bit the ratio, really.
And then he forgot about songs he played with Brian May and the guy from The Who. And I was like, dude, that must be so cool that you could forget about those guys. Like, I don't remember what song we played with them. So you went from writing 100 songs to doing 5 songs to forgetting the songs you did with the dude from The Who and Queen.
That's pretty intense.
Isn't that awesome?
Or do you ever forget that you did a song? Does a song ever pop up where you're
absolutely, absolutely. What happened is just the other day, it's just like, and I was listening to some, I forgot what it was, and they're like, wow, I don't remember doing this at all. But in all fairness, I do work on a lot of songs throughout the year. Like if a
band's good, you'll remember them.
No. Oh, you know what? No, it can. It's just, I don't listen to the records after I've done them. You know what I mean? Maybe once or twice to.
No, I totally get that. I hate listening to anything.
So it's not even that I hate doing it. Is like I don't have time to listen to music anymore. You know what I mean? And if I do, and it's sad, really, because here I am at work 10, 12 hours a day on music. The last thing I want to do afterward is listen to more music, right?
Well, never do for free what you get paid to do. Well, it's funny because my favorite fuck you letter I ever got, and I shared it one time, it's on my wall, is from Brian May saying he was too busy to listen to my record and sent it back to me. But I thought that was the nicest thing, to be honest and just be like, he basically wrote something, I'm too busy doing my own stuff at this point. I have to be honest. I don't even listen to music other than the stuff I'm working on. Here you go. I've returned your press kit, which is way nicer than just putting your fucking burnt CD in the trash.
Yeah. No, I can appreciate that,
Thanks,
I'm
Brian.
serious. I can totally appreciate that. But it is like that. I just totally don't listen to the stuff that I've done because I'd already done it. Like I look forward to the next one as opposed to reminisce.
At any point in your career, did you listen back to something you did prior and think, I wish I, tweaked that before it went out? Like, are there any moments like that?
Every single record.
To this day?
Every single song, every single verse, every single chorus, every single intro and outro, the fade in, the fade out, all of it. But not out of it's just a thing where you go like, I could have done better. You know what I mean? And sometimes it is time constraint, and sometimes it's a constraint put upon you by the artist, or stuff like that. Where you're like,
right. Well, like the saying, it's our art is never complete, only abandoned. It's it's just the eternal loop of this could be better.
Yeah, we
there's
never
the Beatles
finish
version,
it.
and then there's the Beatles version, and then there's the Phil Spector version, right?
There you go. Right? Yeah, it's kind of like that,
That's very comforting to hear because
I mean, but that you're supposed to strive for better, you know what I mean? Learn from your mistakes, and if you didn't, that will mean that was your perfect record,
right?
Sure.
And where do you go from there?
Yeah.
Might as well quit.
Yeah.
Go to 11, Cory. You go to 11.
Yeah. For sure. On a Kemper.
Yes. Ulrich, what do you have coming up? Like, what are you doing nowadays? We're coming up at the end of our second hour, but I want to just make sure we can, keep up with you. I mean, has this last year affected you much? I know we all have home studios, and as do you. So for us, I think we're in a different situation where I think we're able to weather storms like this a bit better than other industries. But
LawSymphony.com.
Subscribe.
Yes, subscribe. And how have you been doing with everything, and what are you up to now?
I have been surprisingly busy, luckily. A lot of folks, and it's been pretty much mixing
Well, that
work.
makes sense.
So a lot of
send it to you.
Yeah, exactly. They've sent me stuff and I mixed it. So that's basically what I've been doing. As I was saying earlier, I never know what I'm working on right now. Right now, I'm working with a band called Kenton Place out of Houston, and we actually track that, and it's time to mix that now. Working with an artist called Precious Child, artist called Thrillsville, and none of these are particularly metal. Some of it borders is dark wave, and other borders on industrial things. That's like the most recent thing. There's a band called Alchemy Fire. They are a little bit more traditional metal. Just finished mixing that, and that came out really cool. A band called Anger Trade out of Phoenix. That's pretty hard. Real fun.
Very cool.
So yeah.
And what do you have a preference? Do you like to get involved with the whole, the producer mixer thing, or do you like to have the I get an email, I get these tracks, I get this fresh thing I haven't heard before, I wasn't involved in the process, and I can shape, someone else's tracks versus the starting and taking it from scratch?
I like both. The full production obviously takes a lot longer. Mixing the stuff that you recorded, it can be hard sometimes, or a lot harder. I've learned to distance myself from it and just kind of open it up and start anew and go like, all right, who recorded this crap? And kind of approach it.
Do you keep your
way.
sessions organized? Like, do you get your own sessions to mix and go, who did, like, what is this? What's this audio 5?
No,
That's like
actually,
me.
yeah, no, I do have the
really bad.
The labeling thing is sometimes a bit murky, but I have a style of working, so it's clear of what is. So that helps. I do switch over from recording to mixing, like on the session itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like I get rid of everything. With a few minor exceptions of like certain particular sounds or whatever that we were creating with certain plugins, but overall, like all the buses go away, all the 98% of the plugins go away, and it's just like start from scratch.
Interesting.
Interesting.
So even if during the session you were crafting a sound with plugins, or the plugins always temp, just like getting it ballpark.
I usually try to record the sound as it should be.
Okay.
So one thing I was going to say that I learned in my chain is that you're right. You should have two people, someone else, one person does a production and another person that's separate autonomously mix the stuff. But it also gives you someone in the chain that you can blame. So for me, when people send me tracks, I just forward them to Cory. So for example, if Jeff Loomis didn't like send his DI track for something, I'm like, dude, Cory, what the fuck? And I know it's my fault, but the fact is, I just engineer and produce now. So, like, even though I think I get a really good sound to tape, if it
By
doesn't
engineer
sound
and produce,
good,
you mean
when
you
people,
forward emails containing engineered and produced tracks?
But I also track everything here for the most part. Like, I do some stuff. Like, don't diminish it completely.
Yeah, I'm in that audio 5 category where it's just unclear, and then my husband comes in and is like, "What is this? This is a disaster."
That's funny.
At least it sounds good when it's yours.
It's the third take doubled. I liked the second bar of this one, so they'll remember to grab that one. Yeah.
I can't even comp myself. It hurts my feelings. I tell people it's like getting naked in front of the mirror, and it really feels that way when other than my vocals, which I just don't even want other people to hear. But I don't want to comp my own guitars because it's like I feel offended by myself. So Cory can just take the DI and make it work at this point. So it's much better that way.
Yeah, you got your own working style, so kudos to you.
Yeah. It's all trial and error. Like you said, we'll get our 10,000 hours in. Ulrich, thank you so much for joining us. I know I learned a ton, and we definitely appreciate your time. As soon as they realize I don't know what I'm doing and they fire me, I'm sure you'll get a call to mix the next Lost Symphony record.
I look forward to it.
Yeah. Me too.
I'll keep you posted on what's going on.
Well, maybe we'll get a budget if we can do this next record, Cory, where we could afford him.
Right.
And you could finally relax.
And then you can chill and actually be a bass player instead
you
of
could just be a bass
everything.
player.
Sounds
That's what
great.
you've always
Sounds
wanted
amazing.
to be. Stay in your box.
Just be a bass player.
Yeah. Stay in that pentatonics
But,
fucking box. Ulrich, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Like, really, like, we asked you and you were you almost seemed like surprised that we wanted to interview you. And I can't tell you how many things I wrote down we didn't even talk about as far as, like, working with Lane Staley and the fact that, Maynard was the wolf on the Three Little Pigs by Green Jelly, which is really green jello. We didn't talk about that and changing it. There's so many things that you've done that were just so integral to the 90s and the 2000s. And obviously you're still working all the time. So from the bottom of my heart, as someone that has been forced to be a producer and an engineer and none of those things well, thank you so much, man, for giving me records that are my test records to find out that my Dyne Audio speakers, which are the exact ones you shit on and used for a while, I'm like, that's why it sounds so good and my car sounds like shit. My speakers are too pleasant.
Yeah, and to everyone listening, go look up Ulrich Wild and look at what he's done and, plug in all those songs, listen to them so you understand the man behind so much of the production and the music.
Find Yamaha speakers that sound like shit so that they're unforgiving, because that's important. Don't get ones that massage your mix. Get the ones that say your mix is fat.
Okay.
It's a great takeaway.
All right, sounds good to me.
On that note, thank you again. And
Thank you so
please
much, man.
like and subscribe and do all those things that we're supposed to tell you guys to do. And
You've been 2020'd.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
I have a story that happened in Israel, weirdly enough. And that was the time we had an impromptu drum solo, which has never happened in Cradle of Filth. Because a certain member of the band, who will remain nameless, shit themselves on stage and that was 4 songs in. They had to wait until the encore, which was another 10 songs later before they could get off stage.
I'm gonna joke.
We know, at least we know it's not the drummer. So that
It's not the drummer.
And it
it's
wasn't
not the drummer. And if it wasn't me.
Oh my God.